Bonjour à tous, and thank you for joining me online today. I come to you from beautiful Canada House here in London. Over the past 3 days, I've had the privilege of advancing Canada's energy and resource agenda with the United Kingdom, one of our closest allies and partners. This visit was about strengthening our alliance, opening new markets for Canadian businesses, and securing investments that will create good jobs for Canada. On the margins of LME Week, critical minerals were front and center on the agenda. As you know, Canada has the reserves, the expertise, the high standards to be a trusted global supplier, and our allies are taking notice. One of the key milestones of this trip was a significant step forward on the Critical Minerals Alliance. I was honored to meet my counterpart, Chris MacDonald, Minister of Industry in the Department of Energy, Security and Net Zero, who was just appointed as the United Kingdom's Special Critical Minerals Envoy. That means now all 7G countries have now officially named their envoys. They are Isabella Chan from Canada, Benjamin Galzuk from France, Matthias Kohler from Germany, Alberto Castronova from Italy, Hiroyuki Hatada from Japan, Chris MacDonald from the United Kingdom, and David Copley from the United States. This means the alliance is now fully operational and ready to deliver on its mandate of diversifying supply to counter non-allied dominance of certain critical minerals, attracting investment, and securing democratic market-based supply chains. As we head into the G7 Energy and Environment Ministers meeting later this month in Toronto, this is a strong signal of serious action being taken to anticipate critical mineral shortages, coordinate responses to deliberate market disruption, and diversify and onshore mining, processing, manufacturing, and recycling where possible. Beyond critical minerals, I had a productive bilateral meeting with Minister MacDonald and Secretary Edward Miliband to deepen collaboration on nuclear energy, including a trilateral meeting with the UK Atomic Energy Agency on civil fusion. These talks build directly on the joint statements by Prime Ministers Carney and Starmer earlier this year, committing to a world-leading Canada-UK partnership on nuclear innovation. I also met with major investors and mining companies with a keen interest in expanding operations in Canada. As you may know, the UK is Canada's largest trading partner in Europe and our third largest globally, with $61 billion in two-way trade last year and with more than 166,000 Canadian jobs supported by investments from the UK into Canada. This trip reinforced that Canada is an attractive, reliable, and ambitious partner for the long term. And I heard interest in doing business in Canada that makes me very optimistic for our future, including as an energy and resource superpower. At this year's G7 as this year's G7 president, Canada is not just participating in global conversations, we are leading those conversations. This trip made clear that our partners see Canada as a reliable, ambitious supplier of the resources and innovation the world needs. From critical minerals to nuclear energy, we are strengthening alliances, securing investment, and creating opportunities that will deliver jobs and prosperity for Canadians while building more resilient, democratic supply chains for all our allies. The progress we made here in London sets the stage for further outcomes at the G7 Energy and Environment Ministers meetings later this month, as well as a new partnership and investments for Canada in our energy and resource sectors. I look forward to bringing the momentum we built here back to Canadian soil next week. Now I would be happy to take your questions. Merci.
Thank you, Minister. We will now begin taking questions. Merci. Nous allons maintenant répondre aux questions. Just a reminder, folks on the line, use the raise your hand function to queue up. Utilisez la fonction lever la main en bas de votre écran. So we'll start with Niall.
Hi, Minister Hodgson. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Great. Thanks for this. Just wanted to ask you, sure you've seen it last couple of weeks, the Trump administration very aggressive in taking stakes in two Canadian critical minerals companies at very aggressive terms, good terms for the U.S. government. Things like virtually free options to buy more shares, and we kind of haven't seen that before from the U.S. And we are in a trade war, and Canada and U.S. are duking things out on that front. In terms of what Trump is doing and that this new shift, is this something that Canada is willing to emulate itself in its own companies? In other words, taking more equity deals and deals at much sort of better terms for the Canadian government? Or is Canada more likely to sort of stay the course with what it's doing through the Canada Growth Fund and loans and grants? Like, what do you think about all that?
So the Prime Minister talked about coming out of Kananaskis a number of tools that we can use to strengthen and fortify critical mineral supply chains. We talked about stockpiling agreements. We talked about offtake agreements. We've talked about potential price floor agreements. And we've talked about bilateral supply agreements. All of those things are on the table. We have a number of different vehicles to use. The Canada Growth Fund is one of those. We have different funding vehicles through ISED. And we will prudently look at all of the ways to make sure we counter what I call non-market activities by other countries that disrupt our supply chains.
Right. Okay. And by non-market, I forget exactly how you put it, non-market sort of activity disrupting supply chains. You're talking about what the U.S. is doing just in the last couple of weeks in terms of those stakes and those Canadian companies?
No, I'm talking about the fact that some countries have chosen to put export restrictions on critical minerals, have chosen to use their overwhelming presence in the processing markets to manipulate supplies of critical minerals on the markets to cause changes in price that would inhibit the development of critical mineral projects in the West.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Now, folks, just a reminder before you begin your questions, just share your full name and affiliation. That was Niall McGee with Global Mail. So next we'll move over to Aya. Just unmute yourself, Aya.
Sorry, we've got some sirens in the background here.
Hi, Minister Hodgson. This is Aya Dufour reporting for iPolitics. My question for you, Major Projects Office CEO Dawn Farrell recently said that a lot of the proposals coming to her office were coming from the Natural Resources Canada Department. So I wonder, what projects would you like to see prioritized?
In natural resources, we have the potential to put forward projects in the minerals and mining space. We have opportunities to put projects forward in renewable energy space. We have opportunities to put projects forward in the hydroelectric space. We have opportunities to put forward transmission opportunities. We have opportunities in conventional energy. So with respect to the ideas that get put forward to the Major Projects Office, it could be any of those. Obviously, there are other departments in government that can put projects forward, and there's obviously proponents who can directly put projects forward.
Okay. Ms. Farrell also said that there were 9 projects that were currently being assessed, and we know there were 5 announced by Carney in September. I wonder, what are the other 4?
I'm not sure I'm following your math there. There were 5 projects put forward for referral to the office. There were 5 strategies of national interest that were named. Those were named when we were in Edmonton. The Prime Minister has said there will be another tranche that comes on Grey Cup Day. We've made no decision as to how many would be coming. There will be a number of projects that get evaluated by the Major Projects Office. They will be referred to the Build Canada Committee, and then the Build Canada Committee will decide what to refer to Minister LeBlanc and the Prime Minister for possible designation. So there's no specific number that has been committed to for Grey Cup Day at this point.
Thank you, Aya. Next, we're going to move to Laura, but before we do, just a quick note for Abigail. Abigail, I saw you had your hand up, which is now down. If you are interested in asking a question, there we go. Okay, next we're going to go to Laura, please. Thanks.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can. Thank you.
My apologies. I was just asking it's Laura Dillon-Kane, Bloomberg News, on China's decision to impose export controls on rare earths. What could a coordinated G7 response look like? And are we seriously considering further actions against China at a time that we're trying to mend ties and potentially increase the sale of our LNG and oil to China?
So as I mentioned in my previous response, there are a number of things that we can do to stimulate the production of some of those critical minerals that the Chinese have restricted export on. We can look at investments in stockpiling agreements. We can look at investments in offtake agreements. We can look at investments in price floors. We can look at contracts for differences. The Canada Growth Fund has the opportunity to invest in preferred or common equity, if that's something. All of those proactive tools could be used to stimulate the demand of those critical minerals and the processing of those critical minerals in Canada or in allied countries. Those are the things that my department is focused on. And that's what I'm here doing in the UK. And that's what the critical mineral envoys will be focusing on. I'm not going to comment on decisions on other aspects of trade with China. That's better put to Minister Anand or Minister Sidhu, who would be responsible for those decisions.
Thank you. And on sort of China's appetite for Canadian oil and LNG, I just wondered if you could speak a little bit about the demand that you see from China for these resources from Canada, and whether you're persuaded that demand will increase for these two fuels.
Well, I don't need to go specifically to China. I can tell you in all of my visits, the answer is unequivocally the world is looking to increase access to Canadian conventional energy. The reality is we're in a very geopolitical world right now, where some countries are choosing to use access to conventional energy as a point of diplomatic coercion. As an alternative, they see Canada as a very reliable supplier, a supplier that uses best practices from an environment and from a respect for Indigenous peoples perspective. That resonates with many of our allies. And I hear over and over again, our allies are interested in getting access to both our Canadian LNG and our Canadian oil.
Thank you very much, Laura. Next, we'll move to Abigail.
Hi, Minister Hodgson. Last week in the Senate, you said Alberta needs the support of BC if it wants to move ahead with a pipeline. In your view, does BC have veto power?
Look, I fully understand that from a regulatory standpoint, an interprovincial pipeline, the final decision rests with the Canadian energy regulator. That being said, we have been very clear that for projects of national interest, we expect proponents to work with the affected jurisdictions and the affected First Nations to get support from those entities. We would be looking for any proponent to do that in an affected jurisdiction and with the affected First Nations. And I believe that's what Alberta is in the process of doing. They've said they would like to be a proponent. They are in the process of working with the affected jurisdiction and with First Nations, and we welcome that dialogue. We think that's what a good proponent should do.
Thank you. And I also want to ask about Keystone. I'm not sure we've heard directly from you since your visit to DC. What can you share about what was said about Keystone in the Oval Office?
What I can share with you is the United States is very interested in energy security. We share an interest in North American energy security. What we shared with the Americans is to the extent that they want to talk about a shared North American energy security in conjunction with shared North American views in some of the other affected areas of our negotiations, we'd be very open to that. From a Canadian perspective, if that means sharing some of our oil, we're not hung up on a particular route. If the Americans want to explore a particular route and it's part of those larger discussions, we're open to that.
Thank you, Abigail. We have enough time to go back to Niall, who has his hand up again. Niall?
Thanks for another one. Just wanted to ask you, Minister Hodgson, like how you view the relationship with the U.S. Now, and in terms of the sort of national security risk or not, because the Trump administration did take those stakes in those Canadian critical minerals companies, and quite a few people are saying, well, why are we not having a really close look at this from a national security viewpoint? Because Trump has repeatedly talked about taking over Canada. So, like, how do you view the U.S. now in terms of that geopolitical risk or relationship, and how have things evolved under Trump?
I think you're referring to the minority investments, I believe, small minority investments in each of, I think, Trilogy and North American Lithium. Those companies' assets are in the United States. So the fact that an ally of ours chooses to make an equity investment into a Canadian company whose sole asset is in the United States, I don't think that bothers us at this time. I think that's capitalism in action. If they're interested in doing that, that's up to them. If a country was choosing to do something that was not in a net benefit to Canada, we have the tools under the Investment Canada Act to address that.
Right, and just as a follow-up, you referred to the U.S. I think there was an ally. I mean, would you still call them an ally in a trade war where there's huge sectors of the Canadian economy targeted, and Trump keeps talking about taking over Canada? Is the U.S. Do you still consider the U.S. an ally of Canada?
So our two countries have been allies for many years. We have had our differences of opinions at various points in times. We've had our trade frictions at various points in time. We are very hopeful that we can get through this difficult time, and we can resume the type of relationship that we've had with the Americans for a long time. I think we have to remember today, Canada still has more free access to U.S. markets. 85% of our goods going across the border are still at zero tariff. That is better than any other country in the world. We can put a label on what that means, but I think our preference is to work out these differences in a way that protects Canadian workers, which protects Canadian business, and we resume the type of normal trading relationships we would hope we would have with a neighbor like the United States.
Thank you, Niall, and everyone else for your questions. It looks like there are no more questions. Il me semble qu'il n'y a plus de questions. So this concludes the event. Thank you, everyone. Merci à tous.